Alright, so let's talk about frame generator. Frame generator is going to be pretty great for using when you're making structural steel assemblies. But the first thing you need to do is actually make a part that you're going to base your assembly off of. So I'm going to just kind of take some initiative here and just draw some random shape that I'm going to use. It's going to be kind of like the design of a floor plan. But basically I will give it some dimensions that I'm just going to choose. So we'll say like 40 feet. You know, because usually structural assemblies are going to be house sized. And we'll do 20 feet. Notice I showed two different ways you can do that when you're trying to do feet. You can type in FT, or you can put that apostrophe in there and it'll change it accordingly. But anyways, so the next thing I can do is, well, technically I'm going to show you two ways to go about this, I should say, too. I'm going to do making the floor plan with just a 2D sketch set, and then I'll do it with also a 3D sketch. Now, naturally, this is the less ideal way, but it may be the way you're more comfortable with. Basically, what I'm going to do is just go in here and offset plane so that I can draw a line coming down, because, you know, this is going to be like an elevated platform, we'll say. So, you know, it's going to have members that come down. So now that I've got these planes, I can just go in, and just to show what I'm projecting, I'll zoom in. I'm going to project this point and this point. Alright, so now I'm going to go back to that front position. And from there, I'm just going to draw lines that are 3 feet long. Alright, so now I've got those. And I'm going to kind of do the same approach here, but I'm going to be extra lazy. And this time I'm just going to project those lines straight over and hit finish. And then let's turn these planes off because it's really daunting to see that. So now we have our basic frame shape. You can kind of see, you know, like that's what it would look like. And what you're doing is drawing like the skeleton that will be where you build upon. So I'm going to save this part, and then what we'll do is go in and import this into assembly and then put parts on it. And it's a really cool tool to use because you can change different things out. But I'll show you. Okay, so I'm just going to call this skeleton sketch. And the one thing I do hate is you have this hierarchy that's kind of strange when you use frame generator, but I mean, you know, what you get out of it, it's definitely worth it. So I'm going to copy the sketch part in. I'm going to paste it. And then, you know, automatically it grounds it, but I'm going to undo that, of course. And then let's go ahead and constrain it using just flush for everything. Since I drew everything on the right plane to begin with, we want it to stay in the same position we drew it in. So, and apparently I missed a click. There we go. Okay, so there's that. So now we've got a fully constrained part. And what the heck, let's go ahead and save it, shall we? We'll call this frame assembly. And it appears that I gotta relocate the file. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is go to the design tab, and then you have this option up here to insert frame. So immediately it pops up, you know, options that you have, and there's a lot going on with this dialog box, but basically you choose a part, you can choose like different sorting areas, you can even choose materials and appearance here, and then you're given a location for you to base your placement on, because you know when I click this line, for instance, it's going to choose the top and the center to align it to that edge. So if I were to do this part, it's going to jump up here. Now, sometimes it's finicky, and you know, you click a line point and it doesn't stick to it. It does the opposite of that. Actually, kind of like in this case, did it move? Okay, it did. I want it to mess up, but it's not gonna. But if that happens, you know, you may have to finagle it, and you can use the align command to do that. You know, you can. I really don't have an example here, but basically you would choose like a point and see it can position to, well actually, so that one it turned a line to it because I clicked this edge and then I clicked this line, so it placed it aligned to that edge. So you know that tool comes in handy to help when you have issues, or you can do like a manual offset and it'll push it out. And then you can also do some between 2 points. So if I wanted to click this end point and that end point, it would place a member. So there's a lot you can do here. And then you can also mirror frame member. Not really sure what that one does. So I'm just going to close all of that and start over so I can see what I'm doing here. I'm assuming it's just going to flip at 180 degrees, but let's see. It didn't appear to. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and make all of this I-beam. And there's technically in Inventor there's different sections for I-beam, but I'm going to stick with this one. Well, not this one. I take that back. Let's see. Oh, okay, I was looking for the drop down for this. Yeah, okay, so let's do I-beams. And then in here, there's a bunch of different options. I'm going to use the W-shaped ones. They're the ones I used to use the most. And let's do like a, this is pretty big. Let's try like an 8x13. Whoops. We'll keep the material the same. And then what I'm going to do is just go in and click all of these. Or you know what? I'll take that back. Let's click these two. So there's another science to it besides just creating these. You want to make sure to not use too many parts. And basically what happens is when I hit OK, it's going to prompt me to save these parts. As you can see, the name is kind of crazy. And even the hierarchy itself isn't too ideal. It's going to, wherever I've got this saved to, it's going to make a folder for frame parts. So if I called this new frame assembly, wouldn't you know I called the other one frame? Should have called that one like general assembly. That's okay. So we'll call this frame assembly 1 since I goofed there. So if I call it this, it's going to create a file path all in there, as you'll see when it fills it up. And then it's giving part names as well. So, you know, like right here, this is our first member. So I'm just going to call it I-beam 1, something like that. And then right off the bat, it's going to create these. Now notice, even though I did that, it still ends up giving it this different name. It's a pain like that. But what you have here now is 2 members. And usually what I do is I go back and I just rename them later. And if it asks, I reassociate the files. It's a lot easier to me just to basically just immediately place a member in, you know, and just hit OK and hit OK again and save it and just don't even worry about it. But the reason I only did these 2 is because I'm going to then do a reuse. And what it does is it takes the same member and it translates it to somewhere else. Whoops. Clicked a few too many times there, so I'm going to undo just to make sure I didn't duplicate it multiple times. But yeah, so click the member. And this is really where the placement gets wonky typically. And you know, it's worth mentioning too that you have controls that pop up on the actual member, and sometimes even choosing a certain end will control the placement. So you have to be very meticulous in where you're clicking and placing because it's a powerful tool. But as is, you know, that appears visually fine. So now I'm going to do another reuse, but I got to close the command or it'll try to reuse that one. And I will click here. And, you know, you're probably thinking, well, that's fine and dandy, but look at those ends over there, you know, like it has this intersection. What do you do? So actually, I'm going to undo the reuses because I like to get the part set up first. But, you know, one thing at a time. So what I'm going to do is then play around with some of these other options. So you can do, you know, like a miter to cut these at a corner. And honestly, it's probably not bad here, but I'm going to do a different trick to kind of show more tools off. So I'm going to do a trim extend. I'm going to extend this member to this face. And now we have more overlap, but now you see it goes to full length. So then I can do a notch, and I can choose the, it's always hard to tell which one to do first. I usually play with this, but I believe you choose the member and then what you're cutting to. Oh, okay, let me clear my selections here. Okay, so let's choose the member, and then this other one. Okay, so I had it backwards. So you're going to choose this member first, the one you want to cut, and then the one you want to cut it to. And there you go. So just like that, it suddenly fit perfectly to it. And, you know, basically on this frame tab, you can pretty much control everything you need to do with this. And it makes this a pretty easy process, because now when I'm doing a reuse of this one, you know, it's going to have that end already cut over here if I recall correctly. And it does. So that's pretty great. But obviously, you got to do order operations at that point. So if you're going to have this member extended, you know, you're going to have to obviously copy it first. So we'll do a reuse and click over here. And then we can do reuse here. Well, actually, I take that back. Order of operations. So now we got to notch this side. So we'll do this guy and then this guy. Alright, and then we can do another reuse. Okay, so now it's really hard to see, but you kind of have to extend this one too, you know, because we did that one side, but we couldn't really necessarily do the other one. So this is where some of that custom work comes in, and you're going to get to, you know, deal with this a lot. But we're going to do a trim extend, and for some reason it's not acknowledging me. Oh, duh. Okay, so here's another thing to note. If you notice, I can't edit these two, but I can edit these. That's because they're reused. They don't exist, basically. They're not the masters, so they can't be controlled. You got to go to the big boys here. So I'm just going to go into this one, and when I change this, it should change the other one too. So now this end is lengthened, and let's just look here. So is this one. Yeah, so you know, you can see it's a pretty powerful tool. You know, the big perk of it is you can edit things, and like in this case, if you do want to change a reuse thing, you actually have to hit the change reuse button. You can also do, let's see, anything else we need to cover? Trim to frame. So like if I had a member in between here, you could also just choose to trim it. It's kind of similar to notch, but you'll see when you're playing that there's you know, different options for whatever. And then to explain the hierarchy, so we have this frame assembly. Inside the frame assembly, which was the first one I saved, that I put this part in, the sketch. So then the frame, if I were to delete it, we would no longer have these members, and the members themselves are listed by part name. So the fact that we reuse this one, you've got two items in there, and you can see it's listed as this instance and that instance here. So same here. And if I didn't do this, you would have like a million parts listed because you're using a million unique parts. You're trying to minimize the amount of unique parts and have anything that's identical actually designed identically. But say you know you're having problems with some kind of design here on this 8x13 here, you can go in and remove these end treatments that we have, the notch. I don't know what part this was. Let me click on it. So you should be able to go in here and choose the actual end treatments, but it doesn't seem to be working. So what you can do as well is just delete the notch on it manually. So like if you're having issues and you can't seem to figure out what's going on, you know, the actual end treatments are listed in the features for each part. So then, you know, we can go ahead and play around more with some of the other options. You can also turn on the frame generator by, I believe, double clicking this. Let's see. I was wrong. Let me look. One of these is going to have an edit with frame generator, but what you can also do is just hit insert frame and it brings it back up. But I don't really want to do that per se. Let's just try change. Okay, yeah, so if I hit change on this guy, it gives me the option to go ahead and change what it actually is. So if I decided, hey, you know, like this is great, I-beams, but it's a little heavy duty. you know, I could go in and change it to channel, which, you know, it's kind of hard to see the C shape there, but if you look close enough in the background, there we go. You can see, like, you can actually retroactively change it to a different member. Now, I think it has to be saved. Yeah, so it's going to prompt another save, but now it's like, hey, there's no intersection, so, you know, it's having problems finding out how to cut it. But basically, you can dynamically change any of these parts to be anything in Content Center, whether it be pop or whatever. So, you know, we don't need to change anything else. I'm just going to go ahead and hit Insert Frame. And I'm going to add in this last member here. And let's make it something different. Let's do like a 5 by something. Or 4 by 13. Let's go small. And then I'm going to try to look at it. My 3D mouse, I need to adjust the settings. It's a little loose if you can't tell. I guess I'll just have to use Shift here. Whoops. Okay, and I also use a lot of Maya, so I'm a little off my game here with the maneuvering. Okay, so it seems to fit mostly within the boundaries. Let's see. It just seems to be poking out a little bit right there. Oh, we still have that offset in there. That's why. Alright, so let's do centered. Reason being is that actually is, you know, about as good as it would get. And then what I can do from here is obviously we don't need all that, so we can just do a trim to frame. And I think it'll trim this end. Backwards again. So we'll do this part first and then that part. And I still did it backwards, I think. Oh, okay, no. So this is one of those times where this is actually good to mention. It trims it too perfectly. So if I were to go in and change this to part priority and open up just this member now. Well, it didn't trim it at all, actually. Maybe it did trim the other one. Let's look. Hard to see much of anything there, actually. Okay, no, it did the trim here. Just didn't seem to actually do much. Alright, so I guess we could also just do a trim extend. The trim the frame has its uses. I'm just not really finding a niche thing. When you're doing some of your assemblies, you'll see though. But then, you know, you've got it there. And then basically we would just go in and do another reuse and just grab all these little points here and place them in. And then, you know, if any of them tend to not be aligned right, you can just go in after and do a change reuse and adjust their positioning. Like this one may need it. It's really random. That's the one thing that does bother me about Frame Generator, but man, it's just so powerful. I mean, you know, if you were to go in and manually do this, it's a lot of constraining, and here is really the best part. If I were to go in and just close some of these, and I have X set to my hotkey to close, it's a little quicker, but if I were to close everything but the sketch, and then I edit the sketch, say I decide to make this 32 feet, or, you know, let's go even smaller, let's do 20 feet, and then we'll do this by 12. So if I do this, and then I hit return, just like that, it edits the entire assembly. And I mean, that's pretty groundbreaking, you know. Besides like tying into parameters, it's going to take a lot of work to get something so automated. So you can go in and you can even add in more sketches in this, you know, option here, which, you know, you could even add them in the original sketch and it'll all show up because it's just a set of sketches. And I did mention earlier I was going to show one more way to do the sketches, but I kind of forgot. So you can do a 3D sketch too. Now this isn't something I talk about a lot, so, you know, it's a scary thing for most people, but if you want the basic concept, you have a point. When you draw from it, it's going to work best if it's just an orthographic position. That's what it's showing here. If you notice, it snaps to those ortho positions. So if you can just be really safe about it and just say 40 feet long, and then zoom out a lot, snap again, say 20 feet, and then keep snapping to those orthographic positions, you can basically lock it down. And then from there, you can do the same thing and just do 3 feet, and then just choose the next point. And if you notice, every time I'm doing that, it's actually moving that, you know, it's called in AutoCAD a gizmo. I'm not sure if that's what it is here, but you see the gizmo goes from that last point that you selected. So the idea is it's kind of like the, oh, what do they call it in AutoCAD? Relative coordinates, you know, like you're basically going from this point, this direction. And it's all very easy as long as you're keeping it in 90-degree increments, which we are in this case, so it works out pretty good. But I'm not sure if it fully constrains it, you know, so you end up with that problem. You need to tie something to the origin, but, you know, the origin itself is kind of hard to find. But if you're looking for like an easier way to do it, you can play around with 3D sketches too. And it works the same way. You end up with the ability to do this. And just for the sake of being able to show, oh, made a 3D sketch. Just to show like the dynamicness of this tool. If I did decide that I wanted some lines in here, I could just add them. Apparently I added them in the original sketch. I was trying to do a separate sketch, but that's okay. I forget that if you choose sketch and you choose an existing, it actually edits it. I hate that, but that's okay. So anyways, now we have the option just to go in here and add more if we want. So, you know, we could do something smaller, like I don't know, maybe some angle. Probably have to be flipped, but boy, they're small. Okay, let's do like a 4-inch or 3 by 3 by quarter. Yeah, and see, in this case, then you would want to, well, there's a lot of ways you can go about this. The easiest probably just to do 180 here. But the problem is when you run and use these options here, a lot of times when you're trying to reuse, it just makes your life difficult. So it may be best to try to use the align tool, and then maybe, trying to think of a good way to go about this. There we go. We can just do a mirror, and then I have a feeling it's just going to adjust the angle. It does. Sad day. Oh, it went all the way back. Went into the sketch at that. Okay. So anyway, then we can just choose this guy, and it keeps our settings from last time. So let's undo that again. So flip. I wonder if you flip it with different faces selected, if it'll. Not really. Okay, so in that case, let's just do something like this. I don't know. To be honest, I don't really use the align tool too much. Because that's what ends up happening. I'm just going to hold control to deselect that. And let's see if we can't click an edge and get something out of it. No, see, if you can just choose a face, easy peasy, you know, but no go. So I'm going to uncheck that. So yeah, I guess in this case, it would just be easier to do 180. But you know, you can play with the settings, and if you notice, like when you do the 180, if you don't have the right edge selected, it's still going to end up being wrong placement-wise. So, and just to show the hierarchy here, now that I've saved all of these, I can show you. So it ends up making a bunch of extra stuff. Hopefully it's on its own folder, but let's look. You know what? I actually don't see any of it. Frame assembly, that's what I'm looking for. Oh, there it is. I don't see any of the parts. Okay, so let's look and see where it actually saved them. Must not have been paying too much attention whenever I actually did it. Okay, so it saved on desktop, frame assembly, frame. Yeah, I don't know why I'm not seeing that. But needless to say, what you'll end up having to do is actually make sure you've got all your files. And you know, a lot of times what I do when I'm using frame generators, when I'm done, I will reorganize the files, because when you're making them on the go, you get a bunch of like these unique IDs, and it's a lot of work, whereas you can just, you know, kind of take note of what you've got and rename it as you go. Or even if you want, you can do a save as and replace it. That seems like a lot of work. But you know, the only downside with frame generator is that you have to do a lot of file management. So keep that in mind. Hopefully the video helps. I know it's a little rough, but you know, I haven't used the frame generator in quite some time. Alright, well, thanks for watching. Take it easy.